Neighbor keeps throwing parties, so mom delivers revenge cake. Jennifer Garvey just moved to a nice, safe-looking neighborhood away from the busy city. She moved out there with her toddler, James, who was a struggle to put to bed every night. As a single mother, she needed every advantage she could afford, but she had no idea her neighbor had other plans. Jennifer loved meeting new people, especially neighbors. She realized between her busy career and settling in, she had forgotten to introduce herself. She felt bad. It was a custom of hers to bake a cake for her neighbors. But she had no idea that soon she'd be baking a cake for a neighbor, but with a different twist. She enjoyed the music in the distance while she cooked dinner and got her things organized for the following day. But as soon as she had put her child to bed at 8 p.m. and it was still playing, she was a little frustrated. Still, the music eventually died down, and she could finally get to sleep. But she had no idea this was only the beginning. Jennifer went 2 days without hearing anything and forgot about the incident. But she was in for a surprise that afternoon when the music started again. She just hoped that it would die down sooner than before. Then she noticed all the people filing into his house. Jennifer couldn't believe the man's disregard for everyone else living nearby. She wasn't against get-togethers if they were quiet, but full-on riggers with booming music was a no-go for her. And to make matters even worse, the party didn't calm down as the evening grew late. It went on until around 4 o'clock in the morning. The entire time Jennifer sat in her room listening to the music, she knew she couldn't get to sleep. So she decided to plot her revenge. Jennifer was running on little to no sleep the next day, but she had done it while she was up due to the music. She had baked a cake for her neighbor. It was a special one that came with a note she typed up in the early hours of the morning. She knew she would have the last laugh after her neighbor received her gift. With the special cake and the note, she marched straight to her neighbor's house, where she rang the doorbell. She dreamt of smashing the cake in the face of whoever answered the door, even if it was his mother. But she kept her cool and waited. Then the door opened, and the man answered. She smiled, only she knew what was so special about the cake. The man didn't take her note too kindly, although his greedy eyes sparkled at the sight of the cake. He snatched both from her before telling her that if she didn't like the loud music, then she could move elsewhere. This made Jennifer's blood boil, but she knew that she would have the last laugh after he ate her special cake. Once Jennifer got back to her house, she smiled. She knew that for at least the next evening, he wouldn't be able to be loud. The cake she had given him was made with cake mix she had found in the cupboard when she moved there. She was sure it was expired and even seemed to have evidence of moths. The cake wouldn't hurt him, but would be sure to have his stomach upset for at least the evening. Because her neighbor wouldn't be considerate, she decided to take her actions further than just the cake. She decided to make a phone call that would make sure he would stop one way or another. Another 2 days passed, and just like before, the loud music started up. She knew he was doing it out of spite, but she had her last plan up her sleeve that he wouldn't see coming, one that would finally shut him up. Jennifer had called the police for a classic noise complaint. She knew it would do the trick and watch the man have to explain himself. The best part was that he couldn't. After the police knocked on his door, he never played his loud music past 7 p.m. And he never bothered Jennifer again. Jack and Holly had 3 young children and lived in a nice neighborhood. Holly worked as a teacher and Jack worked as a cop. They kept a busy routine and cherished their rest and downtime. The new neighbors were a quiet middle-aged couple with no kids. When they first moved in, they seemed like lovely, genuine people. But soon, their nonsense shenanigans would leave Jack no choice. He would have to mix business with pleasure and teach his unassuming neighbors why you shouldn't mess with a cop. Jack and Holly suffered through 2 weeks of their new neighbors' floodlights being on 24/7. They hoped they'd remember to turn them off, but now, they had to say something. The floodlights were positioned just outside their bedroom window and their curtains failed to block them out. They couldn't sleep. But when Jack finally asked them to turn them off, he was shocked by their response. They refused to accommodate them. Jack learned that the man's wife seemed to be afraid of just about everything. She left the floodlights on over their garage door to combat her fear of the dark. But Jack knew that the floodlights couldn't be seen from inside their house. He wouldn't take no for an answer. Another week passed before Jack tried again. This time, he even offered to pay for a timer so that it would turn on and off at a more agreeable hour and they wouldn't have to do anything. Jack waited until they were both gone. Being mindful to avoid suspicion, he moved the security cameras around their house and waited until nightfall. As a cop, he knew what to look for and how to cover his tracks. The last thing he needed was for them to discover that he was the one behind this elaborate scheme. Jack grabbed a ladder and loosened the lights just enough so as they wouldn't turn on. 6 months passed before the neighbors even realized they weren't working. Jack watched as his neighbor fixed the lights again. Another 3 months passed before the neighbors noticed the lights weren't working again. Jack watched as his neighbor grabbed a ladder and tightened them once more. But this time, he could sense something was off. Suddenly, Jack heard someone banging on his front door. The neighbor's eyes narrowed. Really? Vibration from the street? Do you really expect me to believe that? He became visibly angry. It's funny how all this has unfolded. You really wanted those lights to go, and now I find out that there's actually a problem with all outdoor lights. Things were reaching a boiling point. Listen, man, Jack said. He took his belt and handcuffs that hung on the coat rack beside him. I'm a cop. If you're accusing me of something here, I'll be happy to take you down to the precinct and we can talk this out. The man hesitated. He had no idea Jack was a cop. Suddenly, his demeanor changed. Eventually, the man did the exact same thing and left the lights off. Jack wondered how heated the situation would have gotten if he didn't play his cop card. Overall, he was happy with how the situation played out and had quite the story to tell to his family and friends at dinner parties. They managed to avoid disrupting the peace in the neighborhood and learned to live with each other thereafter in peace. The new neighbors never bothered them again but remained civil and would say hi and wave any time they passed each other. Thankfully, no one needed to get the cops involved because Jack already was one.